Laid back and kicking it, let's head back to the studio. Here's Rod.
Welcome back, everybody, on this Thursday morning. Coming up on the program today, Kelly Rudy, Rob Vanstone from the Leader Post. He's got his new book out, 100 Things Rider Fans Should Know Before They Die. And Tim Reed, the president of Evraz Place. We're hosting the 2020 Grey Cup. Lots of things to talk with Tim about. But we're not going to wait any longer. We are going out on the video chat. Darren Dreger joins us, the TSN Hockey Insider. And good morning, Dregs. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Rod. How are you?
Good, good. Before we delve into the hockey talk, Kelly has a very interesting recollection of Peter Labardius' wedding that you got thrown into an MC role last minute because the regular MC didn't want to do it.
No, not quite. I think it was supposed to be a joint venture between you and Toth, and then for some reason at the last minute, he got some anxiety. You ended up taking on the whole responsibility, and instead of showing you the respect that you so rightfully deserved, I got up there, and I think probably the Velcro gloves and rubber boots joke probably you didn't deserve.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, now which wedding are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said, the first or second.
Peter? yeah, that's right. Yeah, I believe it was in Edmonton, and I might have been number 2. It might have been Peter's number 2, yeah.
Well, anyway, I do remember it being a pretty classy affair. There's no question about that. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't nervous about it. Although I remember looking across that room and thinking, I'm surrounded by big mouths. And Rempel, you were right up there with among the biggest mouths of the group. And the one thing I will say is, I take a little bit of pleasure in, and I get chirped from my gray hair all the time. People think that I've gone prematurely gray at 51 years of age. At least I'm not vying for a sub-in Santa Claus look like you got going right now.
Well,
more than fair.
Totally down the road I didn't expect. You guys do advertise Control GX, by the way. It works great. I talked to Bob Weeks about it. But anyways, Rich Sutter was with us yesterday, and he said it's been a very rough 48 hours for the hockey world. Can you talk about that, because you're the insider of it?
Yeah, it really has been. And, I think we can go a little bit further back. No one wants to connect, with good reason. The situation in Toronto in Mitch Marner's rookie year, where Mike Babcock asked him to do something that, was unacceptable in ranking his teammates. But, the truth is, there is somewhat of a connection from there to the Bill Peters scenario, and then to Bill Peters in Carolina. And the simple connection is that the players now feel, understandably, appreciably, that they have a voice. They don't have to put up with it anymore. And that started with Mitch Marner acknowledging that the incident in question actually happened. And Mike Babcock, even though he'd been fired, didn't shy away from it. He too acknowledged that, yes, he did this at the time. He did realize that it was a bad idea to ask a young player to do this, and he apologized at that time. But I think that opened a door. I mean, it obviously did, because Akeem Aliu, who made the racial allegations directed at Bill Peters, went to Twitter on Monday night and made the connection from Mike Babcock to Babcock's, quote, protege, who, as we know, is Bill Peters of the Calgary Flames. And that's where we're at today. But today now we're looking for a finality to that saga. Bill Peters, the racism allegations that date back to 2009 in the American Hockey League. What went on more recently when he was on the bench of the Carolina Hurricanes. And ultimately, the conclusion comes in, what will the Calgary Flames do, if not today, then in the very near future? And there's no inside information here. I think it's a reasonably safe assumption that the Calgary Flames are likely going to fire Bill Peters. But they've had to wrestle with a lot of lawyering, as has the National Hockey League, and likely Peters as well, to get to the point that we may get to as early as later today.
Right. I guess the reason one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on is just get the latest. And the latest is that we don't know, basically, right? Somebody has told me on Twitter this morning that Peters have been told he won't be coaching again. Is that true, or have you heard anything like that? That would be pretty inside stuff. I'd be surprised if that was out.
Yeah. I don't believe that's the case. And not to parse words here, But by coaching again, are we talking about ever, or are we talking about coaching again in
With
Calgary?
the Flames, yeah.
Yeah, and what I know is, and this is as of 10 minutes ago, Rod, the Calgary Flames obviously left Buffalo last night. So they got in back to Calgary late. My understanding is that Brad Treliving, the general manager, is back on the case right now, and probably tying up whatever loose ends still remain in this case. But as of 10 minutes ago, there was nothing official. And I would extend that to, the final status of Bill Peters. Again, we're assuming that the Calgary Flames are going to cut ties. That's the assumption based on everything that we've dug up and we've been informed of in the last couple of days. But until the Calgary Flames issue that announcement, it's still somewhat speculative to a degree.
Okay. To funner things, and then I'll let you go. U.S. Thanksgiving, they say, is the time in the NHL that you know what you have as a team, right? And since today is U.S. Thanksgiving, who in your mind are the real contenders? Who's maybe the pretenders that the first couple months have been a smokescreen?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and it's an obvious answer. I look at the Washington Capitals as being a prime Stanley Cup favored team. That's obvious. The Boston Bruins have dealt with adversity, yet that team looks as ready to win again as any team out there. The Western Conference, for me, is a bit more of a crapshoot. I'm curious at the success of the St. Louis Blues, whether or not they can continue to sustain that. I have no reason to question it. I just want to see it unfold. What about the Edmonton Oilers? I mean, we counted this team out relatively early in the regular season. They wouldn't be able to sustain it. They can't keep the power play numbers up. Their penalty kill can't be this good. They need help in their bottom six. Is their goaltending going to be good enough? Well, they keep doing it. And it's not just because of the electrifying efforts of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That's a big part of the success story. But I think that there's still some questions that we need answers for coming out of Edmonton, and maybe we see that in the second half. But to your point on U.S. Thanksgiving today and the fact that, you normally find out who your pretenders are and your contenders are, I think that that's fair. But I'll tell you this much, guys. Normally by this time in the calendar, we've got a good handle on which teams are most interested in adding pieces. It's not an unofficial trade deadline by any stretch, but teams do know what they need and what they can live without. I don't know that today. I don't know that today. I don't know that the New Jersey Devils, are willing to cut bait on Taylor Hall anytime soon. I think you've got some smaller pieces. I expect that the Islanders are going to finally do something to end the exile with Josh Hosang, who's an intriguing piece. But beyond that, man, it's slow moving. And that could be more to do with all the teams that are strapped because of long-term injury issues in the salary cap.
Interesting. Less than a month away from the World Juniors. Who do you see, or do we know anything about guys getting released, specifically a guy familiar around here in Kirby Dach?
Yeah, we don't. Kirby Dach has been really, really good, obviously based on what we've seen out of him at the NHL level. I recall Bob McKenzie, of course, my colleague, talking about this a couple of weeks ago and referencing the possibility of it. I still feel, even though it's looming, that it's a little bit early, but we know this because we've seen it historically speaking. NHL clubs value the experience of the World Junior Championship because they like seeing, even though these are NHL quality players, top end guys measuring up peer versus peer at the highest level, and that is the World Junior Championship. The issue that you have, of course, is, can you afford to lose that player, even though he's so young, from your NHL roster? So I think that there are some pretty big decisions that need to be made in a short period of time here.
One more with Rempel. He says he's got a story before we let you go.
Well,
James.
No, this is a good one. Okay. So the first game of color I ever did with Rob Carney, but way back in, I think it was 1991, and you'll remember, Darren, back in the days that you were doing play-by-play for the Wheat Kings, and it wasn't exactly a full barn every night. There's about 700 or 800 or 900 people in there. Carn says, just so you know, Kelly, you have to come up with your own intermission guest in the second intermission. That's up to you. I said, okay, no problem. Totally forgot. So we're in the break with about 4 minutes to go to the intermission. And Carnes says to me, he says, so who do you got for an intermission? And my face turned white. He goes, you have 4 minutes to get an intermission guest. And he was mad at me. So I actually ran into the booth while Darren was calling the game and wrote down on a piece of paper, will you be my intermission guest? Please, please, please. And he accommodated me. He came out, did it for me. We had a great time, talked about all kinds of things. So I want to thank you for that, Darren, for saving me back at the Keystone Center 28 years ago.
Yeah.
And the next time, as a token of my appreciation, the next time Labardius gets married, I'll do nothing. I'll treat you with dignity and respect. How's that?
I appreciate that, and I assume the check is still in the mail for bailing you out. And
With
let me leave
interest.
you with this. Yeah, I haven't talked to Rob Kearney in many, many, many years, probably dating back to my time out west. Does he still wear those ridiculously cheap suits?
Of course. He's got more
like,
of them.
Slick back his hair and the funky goggles. I mean, that man had a style. Well, it was a style. Let's just leave it at that. But I had a lot of laughs back in the day with Rob Kearney.
So much.
He looked like Brother Love.
Brother Love from WD. He had a brand before branding was a
That's
thing.
fair.
All right.
No kidding.
Dregs, thanks so much, man. Continue on the trail, and we're watching, of course. I appreciate the time today.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.